He built an empire and then gave it all away to build libraries. Andrew Carnegie wasn't just a billionaire. He was the prototype, one of the richest men to ever live. But when Carnegie died in 1919, none of his wealth was locked in vaults or passed on to heirs. Instead, he gave away 90% of his fortune, amounting to over $350 million in early 20th century dollars, roughly $5.9 billion today, and built a legacy in ink, paper, and stone. Why? Because a single free library changed his life. Born in Scotland in 1835 and immigrating to the U.S. as a child, Carnegie was raised in poverty. By age 13, he was working 10 hours a day in a factory earning $1.20 a week. But it was access to a local library run by a generous local man, who allowed working boys to borrow books that gave Carnegie the self-education to rise through the ranks, from telegraph operator to steel tycoon. He never forgot that. Carnegie went on to fund 2,509 public libraries in the U.S. and 660 more in countries like the U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, over 3,000 libraries worldwide. But here's the kicker. He wasn't just throwing money at buildings. Carnegie required that every town applying for funds commit to maintaining the library with public tax support, ensuring sustainability and community ownership. He built the foundation, but made sure others would continue the work. Today we're exploring what it takes to make a billion-dollar fortune and how to spend it wisely. Welcome to the channel. We depend on reliable information to get us through life. We plan budgets, manage careers, and make big decisions based on data. So how do you choose which sources are trustworthy? In 1848, 5 years after immigrating to the U.S., 13-year-old Carnegie landed a job as a bobbin boy in a textile factory, working 10-hour days for $1.20 a week. At the time, this was about 70 cents a day, or $21 a month, roughly $2 an hour, or $570 a month today. It wasn't enough to lift his family out of poverty, but it was enough for Carnegie to start thinking about a future beyond the factory floor. And that future was accelerated when a friendly librarian let him borrow books in the evenings. This was no ordinary library. It was a subscription lending library owned by a wealthy local man named John C. who had amassed a personal fortune largely on interest income, thanks in part to a network of savings banks he'd invested in. When Watt died, his widow took over running the library, continuing her late husband's mission to offer working boys like Carnegie access to books. As Thomas Edison said, "I don't believe in retirement. A man should be willing to work all his life." But Watt understood that rest was earned. At 18, Carnegie left the factory to become a telegraph operator, working overnight shifts while studying during the day. Within 2 years, he saved enough to buy his first stock, a share in the Keystone Bridge Company. And in 1864, he founded Carnegie Brothers and Company, a partnership with his brother Tom. That same year, Abraham Lincoln signed the Pacific Railway Act, which granted land and funding to 7 U.S. railway companies to support construction of the nation's first transcontinental railroad system. Carnegie Brothers secured a contract to supply rails to the project, and the company experienced explosive growth. When the Civil War ended, soldiers returned home, factories ramped up production, and America entered an economic boom that lasted for nearly 2 decades. In 1872, Carnegie sold his stake in the bridge company for $500,000. Roughly $11 million today, and reinvested the proceeds into Keystone, which had expanded into steel manufacturing. Over the next decade, Carnegie's steel business boomed, earning him a personal fortune estimated between $25 and $30 million in today's money. So how does one go from rags to riches to Carnegie? There are 3 lessons to consider. 1. Opportunity. America was unique in Carnegie's lifetime in that it offered upward mobility to those who arrived seeking opportunity. When Carnegie first came to the U.S., the country was in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, which saw unprecedented technological advancements transform American society and industry. The population nearly doubled in each decade throughout Carnegie's working life, driven by immigration. There was plenty of demand for working hands like Carnegie's, and many businesses were founded on borrowed time. Carnegie himself financed his initial investment in the bridge company by borrowing money from his mother and his brother. 2. Education. Carnegie may not have had a formal education, but he understood its value. Self-education was his primary means of escaping the factory floor. He continued to read voraciously throughout his life, famously reading for hours daily before breakfast. His library card remains the inspiration for our modern concept of universal public libraries. Carnegie famously said, "I and mine can do more good with $1 outside of jails, asylums, and prisons than $100,000 inside of them." No. 3. Innovation. The key to Carnegie's wealth was steel. Steel was essential to building bridges, railroads, factories, and skyscrapers, all of which America was building a lot of. Carnegie recognized the potential of Henry Bessemer's new process for mass-producing steel and used it to great effect. Not only did this fuel his own success, but it helped pave the way for iconic structures like the Brooklyn Bridge, the first skyscraper, and the expansion of American railroads across the continent. In 1889, Carnegie would publish The Gospel of Wealth, in which he argued that private individuals have a moral obligation to act as trustees for the public good, sharing their wealth for the betterment of society. Though Carnegie became the wealthiest private individual in history, giving away 90% of his fortune, the vast majority of his philanthropy went to libraries. They were his vehicle for social mobility, a way to empower disadvantaged people like he once was to better themselves and improve their lives. As a condition of receiving funds for a library, Carnegie stipulated that towns commit to ongoing public support so that the library would be sustainable long after his death. This was groundbreaking. Before Carnegie, public libraries were rare. Most books were expensive, difficult to find, and hard to afford, and literacy rates among working men were low. Carnegie changed that. He believed libraries were the best agency for improving the masses of the people, offering opportunity, education, and self-betterment to anyone with the will to learn. By 1917, Carnegie funded 1,675 libraries around the world, including the largest public library in the world at the time, New York's iconic 40-story Carnegie Hall building. An additional 1,000 libraries followed after Carnegie's death, bringing the total to 3,000. And the impact has been staggering. From 1901 to 1917, adult literacy rose from 75% to 85%, and the number of books borrowed from Carnegie libraries totaled over 300 million annually. Carnegie's libraries were a catalyst for social change, creating a literate populace capable of driving innovation, industry, and progress for generations to come. In an age of billionaires racing to space or hoarding digital currency, Carnegie's legacy hits differently. He proved that wealth can be power, but even more importantly, that knowledge is liberation. He didn't just give away money, he gave away a ladder. Millions climbed it. It's easy to be cynical about ultra-wealthy individuals who hoard resources and drive inequality, but Carnegie's story offers a counterpoint. It's a reminder that extraordinary wealth carries with it an extraordinary responsibility, and that a life well lived is defined not by what you take, but by what you give. Before we go, one more thing. If you want to see more stories like this, follow our new account where we share the latest news about our upcoming episodes. So check it out now to stay in the loop. Thanks for watching.